wasn't interested in hurting things, exactly. I was interested in making things stop.
Another entry revealed. The fictional diaries of Jeffrey Dahmer.
Operation and Silence. Akron, Ohio, hospital and home. Fall 1966, spring 1967. The hole in memory. I don't remember them cutting me open. There's just the before and the after, connected by nothing but a clean hole punched right through the middle of my memory. It's like someone took one of those paper hole punchers from Mrs. Anderson's desk at school and pressed it down hard on my brain. Just click, and a perfect circle of time got pulled right out. The before has a smell, rubber gloves and that cold metal smell from the surgical tray, where they lay out all their tools in perfect, gleaming rows. Sharp things and dull things, each one designed for a specific purpose I didn't understand. The after smells completely different. Like the plastic sheet they put under you in case you leak, and the hot, dusty air that the old radiator blows across the linoleum floor. Between those two smells, there's nothing. Just empty space where 4 hours of my life used to be. My body knows something happened, though. I can feel it when I bend over to tie my Chuck Taylors, or when I try to lift something heavy. There's a tightness way down low on both sides of my belly, like someone wound me too tight with an invisible key. The doctor called it a bilateral inguinal hernia repair, which sounded like fixing a broken machine. Dad drew me a picture on the back of an envelope to explain it. Walls inside a person that weren't strong enough to hold everything in place. I was at Akron General Hospital for 3 days. The ceiling in my room had white acoustic tiles with little black speckles scattered across them like pepper on snow. I spent hours lying on my back counting those dots, trying to find patterns. My bed felt like a bridge between two different worlds. On one side was the window, where I could see the parking lot and the gray November sky. Cars coming and going. People living their normal lives while I was stuck in this strange white place. On the other side was the doorway to the hallway. That was where the real hospital life happened. Nurses in crisp white uniforms and thick-soled shoes that made soft squeak-squeak sounds on the waxed floor. They walked with purpose, carrying clipboards and little paper cups full of pills, speaking a language I'd never heard before. Pre-operative sedation. Post-surgical observation. Bilateral repair with mesh reinforcement. Heavy words that sounded like they were carved out of granite. I think grown-ups like words like that because they can build walls with them. Walls that keep kids on the outside, looking in through windows they're too short to reach. Those words weren't meant for me to understand. They were about me, but not for me. Like I was a broken appliance they were discussing in technical terms.
Oh, where are my manners? My name is Grimwick. And that was just one page of tonight's diary.
Chapter 2. Learning Technical Silence. I think the real silence started right there in that hospital bed. Not the regular kind of quiet you get when you're sulking or mad about something. This was different. What I came to think of as technical silence. Like when Dad winterizes the house, sealing up all the storm windows with clear plastic sheeting and tape. Nothing gets in, nothing gets out. I could feel a door opening somewhere deep inside my head, way back behind my eyes where nobody else could see. It led to a small, empty room, Just a metal folding chair and a card table. No windows, no decorations, no sounds from the outside world. I could slip into that room whenever the hospital got too bright, or too loud, or too scary. I could still hear what was happening around me. Nurses talking in the hallway, the food cart rattling past my door, somebody's television playing the Andy Williams show 3 rooms down. But it all sounded far away, like it was coming from a radio in the neighbor's house with the volume turned way down. That door is still there in my head. I don't think I ever figured out how to close it all the way. Maybe I can't. Maybe I just don't want to anymore. A nurse held my hand while they wheeled me down to the operating room, but she was reading my chart the whole time, not really looking at me. Her hand was warm and dry, and I remember thinking that this might be the last human touch I'd feel before they put me under. The rubber mask came down over my nose and mouth. It smelled like the inside of Dad's work boots mixed with something sweet and chemical. There was this enormous light hanging over the operating table that looked like a giant eyeball staring down at me. Everything was green. The walls, the sheets, even the people wearing green masks and caps so you couldn't see their faces. Just eyes floating above surgical masks, looking down at me like I was something interesting they'd found under a microscope. "Count backwards from 100, Jeffrey," somebody said from behind that blazing light. A voice without a face, without a name. I remember getting to 97. The numbers felt thick in my mouth, like trying to talk through peanut butter. Then it's like someone reached into my brain and erased everything with one giant swipe of a blackboard eraser. Chapter 3. Waking Up Different. Waking up wasn't like opening your eyes on a Saturday morning when you can hear cartoons playing downstairs and smell bacon cooking in the kitchen. It was slow and strange, like my different body parts were coming back into the room, one at a time, from wherever they'd been hiding. My ears came back first. I could hear that steady beep, beep, beep of some machine keeping track of my heartbeat. Then my hands, all tingly and numb, like they'd been asleep for hours. My mouth tasted like metal pennies and cotton balls. Finally, the pain showed up, sharp and pulling on both sides of my stomach, like someone had sewn barbed wire through my skin. A nurse was standing next to my bed, writing something on a clipboard. She had gray hair and tired eyes, and she smelled like coffee and hand lotion. "Don't try to talk yet, honey," she said without looking at me. "Just rest now," so I didn't talk. And right away, I noticed something interesting. When you don't say anything, people stop asking you questions. They assume you're either too sick or too young to have anything worthwhile to contribute to the conversation. Silence became my first real tool for controlling other people's behavior. It was also the beginning of understanding that words were optional in most situations. People filled in the blanks themselves, projected whatever they needed to see onto your quiet face. If you looked tired, they assumed you were tired. If you looked sad, they assumed you were sad. You could be thinking anything at all behind your eyes, and they'd never know. During those 3 days in the hospital, I started to realize that every kid has a list in their head of things they know for sure are true. Basic facts about how the world works. The ground is solid under your feet. Your own body belongs to you and nobody else. Your parents will protect you from harm. Adults tell you the truth about important things. That day in the hospital, my list got a lot shorter, real fast. I learned that your body is like a house that other people have skeleton keys to. They can come in while you're sleeping and rearrange the furniture, move things around, fix what they think is broken. They can cut you open and take pieces out, or put pieces in, and you can't do anything to stop them. You might not even remember it happening. That idea, The idea that you don't really own yourself the way you thought you did changes everything. It makes you stop trusting things. Not just people, but the whole way everything is supposed to work. The basic rules you thought you could count on. Chapter 4. The Rules of Technical Silence. After that, I started really paying attention to jars with screw-on lids. I loved the sound they made when you twisted them tight. That little squeak, squeak, squeak of the threads catching, and then that final solid stop when you couldn't turn it anymore. That sound became like a promise to me. This is closed until I decide to open it again. Nobody else gets to make that choice. For months after the operation, the sound of a lid clicking shut felt like saying grace before dinner. It was a prayer to something I couldn't name, but it made me feel safer. The silence I learned in that hospital had rules. I couldn't have written them down back then. I was only 6 years old. But I knew them in my bones like multiplication tables. Rule 1. Words are like turning on the overhead light in a dark room. They show people exactly what you're doing, exactly what you're thinking. Sometimes it's smarter to work in the shadows, where nobody can see your hands moving. Rule 2. When your mouth is shut, your ears work twice as good. You can hear the things people don't say out loud, the pauses between their words, the way their voice changes when they're lying, the sound the air makes when it gets thick and heavy right before a fight starts. Rule 3. Quiet has different temperatures, just like water. There's warm quiet, like being under a thick quilt when it's snowing outside, and you can hear the wind but it can't touch you. And there's cold quiet, like our garage in January with the car gone, and nothing but concrete walls and tools hanging on rusty nails. I got real good at telling the difference. Warm quiet was safe. Cold quiet meant someone was about to get hurt. Rule 4. Silent people see more because they're not busy making noise. When everyone else is talking and laughing and arguing, you can watch their faces, study the way they move their hands. Notice who looks at who when they think nobody's watching. Rule 5. Silence can be a weapon if you know how to use it. Not talking back when someone yells at you makes them feel foolish. Not answering questions makes people nervous. Not reacting to insults makes the other person look crazy. I was learning the power of withholding myself, of being present but unavailable, there but not there. Chapter 5. The Architecture of Control. At home, Mom and Dad kept fighting about the same things they always fought about. Money, his long hours at PPG Industries, her mysterious headaches that kept her in bed for days. But now I had a different way of experiencing their arguments. Instead of getting scared or upset, I'd just slip away into that quiet room in my head and watch from a safe distance. I wasn't hiding from them anymore. I was studying them, like specimens under a microscope. The way Dad's jaw muscles would twitch when he was trying not to lose his temper. The way Mom's voice would get higher and thinner until it sounded like steam escaping from a kettle. How they'd stand exactly 4 feet apart during their worst fights, like there was an invisible force field between them. Dad would try to explain the operation to me using his chemist brain, drawing invisible diagrams in the air with his finger. The muscle wall was compromised here, son. See? They had to repair the fascia and reinforce it with surgical mesh. I'd nod and look at his hands instead of his face, thinking, he likes the things you can point to and name, the things you can fix with the right tools and technique. I'm more interested in the things that are left over after all the names and explanations run out. The pain wasn't what changed me. Pain is just noise. Loud, messy static that fills up all the empty space in your head so you can't think clearly. You can't build anything useful when there's too much racket. What really got to me was the feeling of losing control completely, and then having to figure out how to build my own kind of control from scratch. There are basically 2 ways to handle that situation. You can trust the people in charge to take care of you, or you can become the person in charge yourself. I started doing the second thing. Not on purpose at first. I just found myself looking for things that came with clear step-by-step instructions. Chapter 6. Building Perfect Things. That Christmas, I got a Revell model kit, a P-51 Mustang fighter plane that came in a flat box with a picture of the finished product on the front. I loved everything about it. The smell of the new plastic parts, still attached to their sprues. The tiny instruction booklet with numbered diagrams. The little tube of tester's cement that you had to puncture with a pin. I spent the whole Saturday after Christmas at the kitchen table, putting that plane together, piece by piece. The instructions were printed right on the back of the box, in numbered steps, with little arrows showing you exactly where each part belonged. Step 1. Cement wing section A to fuselage. Step 2. Attach landing gear assembly. Step 3. Install cockpit canopy. I laid out all the tiny plastic parts on yesterday's Akron Journal, organized by size and shape and function. Each piece had a number molded right into the plastic, so you couldn't make mistakes if you followed the directions carefully. The tube of cement smelled sharp and clean, almost like the operating room, but without that undertone of fear and antiseptic. I'd put just a little dab of glue on each connection point and hold the pieces together until the cement grabbed hold, and they became one permanent thing. I followed every single step exactly like the instructions said. No shortcuts or creative interpretations. It was the quietest, most peaceful afternoon I'd had since before the hospital. When I was finished, I had a perfect little airplane sitting on the table in front of me. It would never fly anywhere. Its wheels were glued down permanently to a plastic base. But that's exactly why it was perfect. It wasn't going anywhere. It would just sit on my dresser and be exactly what it was supposed to be. Forever and ever. No missing time. No gaps in the middle where something important had been taken away. Just step 1, step 2, step 3, leading to a conclusion you could predict and control. Chapter 7. The archive begins. School turned out to be an excellent place to practice my new technical silence. When you don't talk much, two things happen with the other kids. Either they forget you exist, or they decide you must be really smart and mysterious. Both reactions work in your favor. If they forget about you, they leave you alone to observe. If they think you're intelligent, they don't bother you with stupid questions or try to include you in their childish games. I always picked a desk on the side of the classroom, never in the middle where Mrs. Patterson's attention landed most often. From the edges, you can do things nobody notices. You can arrange your pencils so they're perfectly parallel. You can stack your books in order of height and thickness. You can study the other children like they're exhibits in a museum. It's a small thing, imposing order on your immediate environment, but it uses the same logic that works for bigger, more complicated problems. When the world feels chaotic and unpredictable, you find one tiny piece of it you can control completely. You start with what's right in front of you, and build outward from there. I remember Billy Capshaw asking me at recess why I was always so quiet. He was standing there with his shoes untied and his shirt tail hanging out, picking his nose like he was mining for gold. I thought about his question for a long moment, weighing different possible answers. Finally, I said, "Because when you talk, you always end up having to say more stuff than you plan to." He laughed like I'd told him the funniest joke in the world. But it wasn't a joke. It was a mathematical formula I'd figured out through careful observation. Words are like borrowing money from a bank. The interest you have to pay is answering more questions, explaining yourself, getting dragged into conversations you never wanted to have in the first place. Silence is like paying cash. Clean, simple, no strings attached. At home, I started taking things apart. Not breaking them out of anger or curiosity, that's different. Taking them apart carefully and methodically, like a scientist studying specimens. Things nobody would miss. An old Big Ben alarm clock from the basement that hadn't ticked in years. Dad's flashlight with the corroded batteries. Mom's little Zenith transistor radio that only made static no matter how you adjusted the antenna. I'd take them up to my room and sit cross-legged on the braided rug with a small set of Phillips head screwdrivers I'd borrowed from Dad's pegboard in the garage. I'd unscrew the back panel real slow and careful, like I was performing surgery, and look at all the complicated guts inside. Then I'd start pulling out the little parts one by one. Tiny orange vacuum tubes that looked like miniature light bulbs, coils of copper wire wound around ceramic cores, resistors with colored stripes that meant something in a code I didn't understand yet. I'd sort everything into families on the carpet. All the tubes in one pile, arranged by size. All the screws in another pile, sorted by thread pitch and length. All the wires coiled up neat like sleeping snakes. I learned that taking something apart isn't the same as destroying it. It's more like learning to speak its secret language, understanding how all the pieces work together to create something larger than themselves. There was this feeling I'd get when I'd removed the very last component and everything was finally quiet and still. See, a ticking clock is like a question that never stops asking itself. What time is it now? What time is it now? Over and over until you want to scream. But a clock in pieces scattered across your bedroom floor, that's an answer. That's peace. I wasn't just learning about how radios and clocks worked on the inside. I was learning about myself, about taking the complicated, noisy parts of something and laying them out in neat rows until nothing was moving or making sound anymore. I wasn't interested in hurting things, exactly. I was interested in making things stop. Because anything that happens sudden and unexpected is the enemy of being in control. And control, I was beginning to understand, was the most important thing in the world. People are going to say he became what he became because of this reason or that reason. Because his parents didn't love him enough, or because his brain was wired wrong from birth, or because of the operation, or the divorce, or any number of convenient explanations that make everybody feel better about living in a world where someone like me is possible. Those are comfortable explanations. Like those big soft recliners in the furniture store that everybody wants to sink into and fall asleep. I don't have a comfortable chair like that. I just have a list of things I observed during those months after the operation. I observed that what they did to my body in that hospital left a kind of invisible map burned into my nervous system. A reminder that ownership of yourself is mostly an illusion. I observed that silence can pull you down like quicksand if you're not careful, but it can also be the most powerful tool you own if you learn to use it right. I observed that making things orderly and controllable feels just as good as eating when you're hungry, or sleeping when you're tired. I observed that it's almost impossible to trust getting close to another person when you've learned that somebody can open you up like a can of soup while you're unconscious and you can't do anything to stop them. The operation left a scar you can see, 2 thin white lines on my belly that look like tiny railroad tracks running parallel to nowhere. But it left another scar that nobody can see, burned into a deeper part of me that doesn't have a medical name. It left me with this rule that I've never been able to erase. Someone can open you up without asking permission, and they don't have to give you back the missing time when they're finished. So I started collecting time for myself, storing it up in that quiet archive I was building inside my head. I didn't know that's what I was doing back then. I just knew it felt good to put a lid on a mason jar and hear it click shut tight, and to know that whatever was inside that jar belonged to me and me alone. Nobody could take it away. Nobody could open it while I was sleeping. Nobody could punch holes in the middle of it and leave me with gaps I'd never be able to fill. I can still hear those nurse shoes squeaking on the hospital linoleum when I close my eyes at night. Squeak, pause, squeak. It's the sound of time walking around in soft-soled shoes, moving forward whether you're ready or not. When that sound starts playing in my memory, I go back to that little room in my head, the one with the folding chair and the card table, and no windows. I sit down at that table and put both hands flat on the surface, and wait there until the world outside starts to feel like something I can get my arms around. Then I stand up, and I go find something with a lid, and I twist it shut as tight as I can make it go. It's never enough, but it's a method, and having a method is better than having nothing at all. It's what you've got left when everything else gets taken away from you, while you're counting backwards from 100, and can't do anything but watch it disappear.
Ah. I trust you enjoyed this glimpse into a most curious diary. If so, leave behind a small token of your delight with a like, and do consider joining our circle by subscribing. And remember, ring the little bell, and you shall be the very first to know when another diary or a fresh entry emerges from the shadows. And if a whisper stirs in your mind, a thought, a riddle, perhaps a name of someone whose secrets you would dare to uncover, leave it from me below. I read them one by one. And who knows, your wish may guide my hand to the very next diary I choose from my collection.